Hello and welcome to Mountain Patriot Homestead. Recently, I put together a video on making some pickled beans, dilly beans, and I asked would anybody be interested in me making some sauerkraut. Now, I have much more cabbage than this. I've got a whole sack of cabbage that I harvested here just a few days ago. I need to get something done with this. And sauerkraut is going to be easy to make. I'm not going to say it's a fast process because it's not. It does take several weeks for it to get to the sourness that I like, but it is not a difficult process. So today I'm going to bring you along with me just so you can, if you grow your own cabbage, you can try it yourself or go to the farmer's market or wherever you get your cabbage from, and I'll show you how you can put together your own sauerkraut. So before we just jump off into the process, I wanted to show you just what I have here in front of me that I'm using to put together my sauerkraut. Your process may be different. You may have different containers or different type of mixing bowls, or you may use a knife or a mandolin. But one thing that I would suggest you do not deviate from, and that is use canning salt to make your sauerkraut, not table salt, because I don't think you're going to get as good of a product, and that's what it's all about, right? So let me just kind of go over what I have. This is not a fancy bowl at all. I just wanted a big tub that I could really get into. I've got mixing bowls, but they weren't going to give me the space that I needed to get this mixed up. And all I'm mixing is cabbage and salt. That's it. That's sauerkraut. So what type of containers am I putting it in? Well, you could put it into a largemouth quart jar if that's the amount that you wanted to make. You could put it into half-gallon jars. You could put it into, if you've got big glass gallon jars, do that. Crocks. My mama used crocks to do a lot of her pickled products in. I needed something larger than what I had. So I started looking, and for whatever reason this year, gallon jars, the glass gallon jars, seem to be very hard to come by. So I did find these. I found these at Walmart. It's the only place I could find this size of a jug, and this holds, I think it's like 15.5 cups. As you can see, it's a large jar, and what they're meant for is it's advertised to store dry goods in, beans, rice, whatever, and they're made with these nice tops that you can stack and all that. But for this process, originally I'm not going to be using the tops. I'll be packing it in here, but then I will be covering the top with a cheesecloth and just tying off the top to keep any, flies, gnats, anything, dust, hair from getting inside. So I'll be covering that because I want it to be able to breathe, because if it doesn't, then it's just going to go bad, and we don't want that to happen. Or if it's packed in there and it can't off gas, it can explode, and you don't want fermented food exploding in your house. So that's why you've got an extra clean towel that you can put over the top. That's fine. If you don't have cheesecloth, you can use a very clean towel and just tie that over the top. Work perfectly fine. But choose a nice sturdy glass container And I prefer wide mouth because you really got to get in there to pack this down. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a little bit. So you want your jars, set that aside. And as I said, you can use a knife, or if you've got a mandolin to cut it with. You may have your grandma's old cabbage slicer that she used to slice up cabbage. If you do, bless you. You are so fortunate, and I'm glad that you have that. I'd love to have one. I don't, but I do have a mandolin that I always forget that I have, and so I slice most things by hand. Anyway, I have one, and I'm going to try it on one of them today, and one of them I'm going to try by hand, just to see how it goes. So, I have my canning salt, as I said, and the mixture that I'm going to be using to make this sauerkraut is I'm going to be using 2% salt for every pound of cabbage. Now that may, if that throws some of you off of, oh my gosh, math, it's not difficult, honestly. When you get your cabbage sliced up, weigh your cabbage, and then you can do it multiply whatever your poundage is times 0.02, and that will give you the weight of salt that you need for that, and you'll be fine, okay? And there you go. That's how we're going to start, and let me get to slicing. Now, the first, I am using a knife to slice it with, and it does not have to be just chopped up super fine, but it does need to be chopped up enough, with giving you enough surface area that it can absorb that brine. And it was at this point in time that I decided to just go to voiceover because it started pouring and my husband came in from outside where he was working. I don't expect him to sit around in silence while I record videos, and the dog was huffing and puffing because it was storming. So all I'm doing is I am continuing to hand chop this one head of cabbage, and as I find leaves that I just really don't like the looks of, I'm picking them out and getting them ready to go into my tub where I'll add salt to them. I got the smaller head out of the way and began on my larger head of cabbage. This was the biggest one that I grew this year, and it was a nice head of cabbage. I am just cutting it up into smaller pieces because I am going to try to use the mandolin to see how that works out. Now, I've owned this mandolin for a number of years. My mama used to have just a little small one, but somebody gave me this one. I don't even remember who. And it does all kinds of things. You can make French fries and all types of things. I'm trying not to, you've got to be careful with a mandolin because they're very sharp, and you don't want your hand to hit that blade because it would slice it off just as well. So it does look like I'm being careless here, but my hand is quite a bit above that, and I'm just taking off some of the limp leaves because that wasn't working so well, and I am using my gripper here to prevent my hand from going over, and you see it's just sliding everywhere. So this reminds me of why I don't use my mandolin. I probably would be better at it if I used it more often, but even though I don't have like crazy knife skills or anything, I prefer using my knife to using the mandolin because, yeah, I just have made a mess, and even though it has shredded it up into smaller pieces, I just, yeah, I didn't like that. So I am going to revert back over to my knife. As with anything else in life, you just got to do what works best for you. And for me, the knife just is easier, I guess, because I am just not that good with the mandolin. Now, I do not mind using it for potatoes and stuff like that, but you know, for this cabbage, this works just as quick. For me to do that, I don't have to worry. All I have to worry about is keeping my fingers out of the way of the blade, but I don't have to worry about taking my palm off because I got careless and looked away and, you know, run my hand over that sharp blade. So, you know, see how fast that did, and just chop it up. You, like I said, you don't have to have it tiny little shreds, but it does give it more surface area the smaller that you have it chopped. But there you go, and that is how quick you can do, you know, do it with a knife. But if you are good with a mandolin, or if you have an actual cabbage slicer and you're good with that, you use whatever is working well for you. So I'd weighed my cabbage and I had 2.75 pounds of cabbage. And by multiplying that amount, 2.75, by 0.02, I was able to find out that I needed approximately a tablespoon and 1 teaspoon, or 4 teaspoons of canning salt. Now for this part, if you are a kitchen gloves type person, by all means put your kitchen gloves on, but I just wash my hands good and I get in there. And what you're doing is you are kneading this just like if you were kneading bread dough. You are just squeezing this and working that salt into the cabbage and breaking down that cabbage. Now remember, cabbage is pretty fibrous, so you're gonna get a workout. For me, the hardest part of this is my elbow. I broke my elbow a long time ago, so my elbow tells when I am really getting in there and trying to do this for a length of time. But just keep working on that because you want to work that work the salt into the cabbage, because that is what is going to draw liquid out of your cabbage to make the brine that is actually going to ferment and make your sauerkraut. And you're just going to keep this up until you get that really worked in there good and you start seeing the liquid come out of your cabbage. Once you start seeing that liquid beginning to be drawn from your cabbage, it is time to start putting it into your container. And for each handful that you put in there, or each layer that you put in there, make sure that you press that down in there real good, because that is the part that's going to be drawing your liquid out of the cabbage, because the cabbage itself should be making your brine. So I went and found my tamper. I'm sure there's a more technical name than this, but I went and found my tamper that I use in my blender, and I am just pressing and pressing here, because you want the liquid to come out of the cabbage, because the cabbage and salt together are actually what's making your brine in your sauerkraut. That's what you want. Now, when I was putting the salt in there, just in case I let this out of the voiceover, if you put salt in there and you just think you want more salt in it, absolutely put more salt in it. Because I know I hear a lot of people talk about even store-bought sauerkraut that they get. It's too salty. I didn't like it. It was too salty. You can drain your sauerkraut and you can rinse your sauerkraut and rinse part of that salt off of there, because it's the sourness that you're wanting. It's not actually the salt in the final product, because the salt is what's helping pickle it and draw the liquid out. That's what it's really for, is to draw the liquid out and help preserve it, but you don't have to eat it. And so if it's too salty, you can drain it and rinse it and actually make it more palatable if you're not a huge salt person. And I can understand that, because I like my food with salt in it. I don't like my food salty. So I am just pressing and pressing and pressing here. I'm not getting quite as much liquid out of this, and I'll tell you why. It's my fault. Because I picked this cabbage probably, I think it was Tuesday maybe, and this is Saturday. You should not wait that long. It's not that it's going bad, it's just it tends to dry, you know, because the air pulls moisture out of things, and so it does tend to dry a bit. If I would have picked it and immediately done this, there would have been more moisture in the cabbage, and it would not have been as dry. Now, what you can do is, if yours does this, you can come back and you can make a water and salt brine and just add that to it, because the whole point is, and I keep saying the whole point, I don't guess it's the whole point, but what you want to happen is you want this cabbage submerged under the liquid. You don't want the cabbage above your liquid in there. So you want it submerged in the liquid. And that's why I'm packing. And if you happen to see a leaf that doesn't look so good, pull it out of there. You know, sometimes some slip by, but you don't want that in the finished product, because first of all, it may not taste as good, but it don't look pretty. So pull it out of there. The more I pack this, the more liquid is coming up, but I'm still not seeing near the amount of liquid in it that I want. So I'm probably going to end up brining this a little bit, because again, I want it under the liquid so it can get pickled. That's why at the very end, and that's why the old crocks, you can still buy them, but like the Ohio crocks, the stoneware crocks, you can buy the weights. They sell like these stoneware weights that go on top. I'm just throwing things everywhere. that go on top of your product so it will hold it under the liquid. But for what I'm doing here, you can do different things. You could set a weighted bowl or plate on top. You could wrap it up real good and put a rock on top of it if you wanted to. But you can also, another way of doing it, I've seen people put like a sandwich bag of water on top. Well, if that bag breaks, it's going to dilute your product. But what you can do in place of that is you can put brine in a Ziploc bag and put it on top of your product. And if that bag happens to break, all that's going into your product is more brine. So, not make a mess if it overflows, but at least it won't be diluting your product and messing up things. So, as you can see, I had almost 3 pounds of cabbage, and I've got about half a jar because I don't have a handful of stuff left in here. So I can chop up some more cabbage, measure it up, and add it in here, and if we need to, we'll mix up some brine and add that to it, and we'll have us a jar of sauerkraut added. But as you can see, I have been steadily mashing that down, and what you really want is you want to see this filling up with liquid. I'm not seeing that. So, unless this next batch of cabbage performs some kind of miracle, I'm going to be adding brine to this. So, let's see what the rest of it does, and we'll see what we need to do. Alright, as I have been chopping up the remainder of the cabbage and adding salt and kneading it into it, the moisture level has been rising in this jar. It's up almost to the top now. I say almost to the top of the cabbage. Let me clear that up, clarify. And this cabbage here is actually a different type of cabbage. It is called, and I'm not advertising for Baker Creek, even though that is where I get most of my seeds from. They're right up the road from me, so it's wonderful. This is called Filderkraut. It's F-I-L-D-E-R-K-R-A-U-T, I believe. It's been a long time since I've been in spelling bees, so I believe that's how you spell it. But this is rather than being the round heads of cabbage like a regular cabbage that we think of, it comes up into almost a cone, and it's just a different shaped cabbage, but it is also a more moist cabbage. See there? See how that's sticking to my hand? It's a very moist cabbage. I've already got some salt added into this. I've been kneading it. Now I'm just going to put it into this jar, do the same thing that I did with the last, and just pack that in there. Just pack the dickens out of it. Now I'll tell you, I was mentioning, see, I always got to make a mess every time. If I'm in the kitchen, I'm making a mess. But as I was telling you about the brine having to cover the liquid having to cover the cabbage, it does. So again, let me remind you to pack this in there as tightly as you can. You're trying to get that moisture to come up. If you get fresh cabbage and you do it right then, you will likely have a better product than what I'm doing, because I did wait several days before I have used this cabbage. It's not bad cabbage. I mean, it would make a wonderful skillet of fried cabbage. It would make a wonderful coleslaw. It'd make anything. You know, it's still good cabbage. It's just, it has a little less moisture because it has been sitting for a few days. Kind of like if you go to the grocery store and buy the cabbage off the shelf, you know, a lot of times that stuff has been picked for a while, but it depends on where your store is, where they get their products, because, well, sometimes stuff is, I know we have in town, and when I say in town here, it's because where I live, town, population about 12,000 people, is where the closest grocery stores are, but at least one of them that I know of, and maybe more, because we don't have a whole lot. We have a few locally owned kind of grocery stores. I say locally owned, they're not like huge national chains or anything. They're more regional stores. And we have Walmart. But there's one of the grocery stores up there that buys produce from local farmers. So, you know, just check in some of your smaller grocery stores, I would think, and they may have produce that's more locally grown. But of course, check farmers markets, check next door neighbor. They may have some extra. Got a little piece of leaf there I don't want. Now, what happens when I get to the top and I don't have enough brine? You know, I talked about you can make some and pour it over it. You can. But how do you do that? Well, you may know how. And I don't need to tell you, and if so, that's fine. I'm glad, because you may know better than I do. But a typical brine for this would be a teaspoon of this canning salt to a cup of unfiltered or non-chlorinated water, because chlorination is not your friend, and sometimes minerals, even in, you know, well water, which I grew up on well water, so I'm not knocking well water at all. But like this stuff that comes out of our taps around here is chlorinated. Even though we live out in the middle of the boondocks, we're still on city water because we're up on top of the mountain, and it cost a king's ransom to have a well dug. But where we're at, we have city water, and it's chlorinated. Some days it's so chlorinated it smells like a swimming pool. So filtered water works best, because if not, you know, this stuff it can affect the outcome of your fermented goods. I'll just put it that way. All right. Still have a little cabbage. Still have a little cabbage here. You know what I think I may do with that is may rinse the salt off of that, the excess salt, and drain it. And I just may make me some coleslaw for later today, because I like me some good coleslaw. Because I don't want to get this so full that I can't get the liquid over the top of it, and that's just that. Now, why is it so important that the liquid be over the top of this? Well, if it's not, and oxygen gets to it, it can taint your jar of fermented goods, and you don't want that happening. So oxygen is not your friend in your sauerkraut. You do not want oxygen getting to it. So it has to be under the brine. And what I was talking about with the something, forgot what I was talking about. It has to be under the brine, and the lid, putting a lid on it. You don't want a tight lid on this until it's through fermenting, and you want to permanently do something with it, whether it's you want to can it, whether you want to put it in the refrigerator. You want it to be able to off gas as it's fermenting. Now it can take 3 to 6 weeks to ferment, depending on how sour you like yours. Again, I like mine got it all packed in and then made a mess. I like mine sour. I do not like mine overly salty. But remember what I said, you can drain it, rinse it, and rinse a lot of that salt out of there. It won't. Now, I guess if you soaked it forever, you might soak part of the sourness out of it, but you're not just rinsing it off. You're not soaking, or you're not washing the sourness out of it. So you can get rid of part of the salt without getting rid of the sourness. So that's about as full as I want to get that with the cabbage. See, this thing comes in handy. I feel like I've run a marathon just because I'm out of shape and fat, but got a gnat floating in here. But I've got that packed down. This is about as packed as I can get it, and I just do not have that a liquid up where I want it. And so I'm going to mix up a brine to put in here because I want that covered. So give me a minute and let me get some mixed up. All right. I have got my salt dissolved, and that was 2 teaspoons of salt and 2 cups of water. I'm just going to start slowly pouring that down over that. Now, something you're going to want to do is put this in a cool, dark place. And by cool, I mean from 60 to 75 degrees. Keep it cool, keep it dark. You want to inhibit as much of anything growing on this as you can. However, sorry, the dryer's going off. However, you may see a white film develop on top of it. That's perfectly normal. You can skim that off. That's good stuff. That's fine. If you start seeing strange things growing, if you have a science project going on with it, if it doesn't smell, if it starts smelling rotten, and I know some people think sauerkraut smells rotten anyway, but if it doesn't smell like sauerkraut, if it starts smelling like some funky science project, it's better to be safe than sorry. Sorry that you lost your cabbage and your salt, but it's better to do that than to lose you. So, all right, I have got that in there, and it is just barely over the top of that. That is fine because some more liquid is still going to leach out of this cabbage as it's fermenting, but check on it. And if you see that it looks like your brine is too low, make more. It's a teaspoon to a cup. That's all. That's it. And you just dissolve it, pour it over that. I used cool water. It's still dissolved fine. Now I'm going to put my weight in there, and again I'm going to use brine as a weight in a bag. Put it on top of that because I want to keep this underwater or under the liquid. And then I'm going to put the cheesecloth on it and finish it up. I've got my bag, kind of, and I'm just adding a cup of brine into it. And I'll see how this works. If I think it needs to have more, I'll put more in it. But I'm just trying to hold down the floaters to keep it under the water. All right, and there we go. And that brine is almost overflowing. When I go put it up, I'm gonna have to be really careful that I don't make a mess. Get that piece that's off the top of that. And now I'm gonna put my cheesecloth on. And if you don't have cheesecloth, again, use a really clean towel. I know not everybody has cheesecloth. You can get cheesecloth at usually anywhere it carries canning supplies. If you don't find them there, you can find them on Amazon. I got a whole package of them for little or nothing off of Amazon during some sale they were having. But all right, I've got that on there. I'm just using a rubber band. You could use a string. Heck, you could use a shoelace if you have to, but just make sure whatever you're using is clean. I've got that on there. That keeps everything out of it. And I am going to set this in a cool, dark place. I'm going to check on it. I don't have to check on it every 10 minutes, but I will check on it frequently to make sure that I'm not growing any science projects, that everything looks and smells like it should. And hopefully in 3 to 6 weeks, you can taste it after 3 weeks. I tend to go a little longer because I do like mine sour. I'll check it, and when it's ready to my satisfaction, I'll take it out, I'll put that lid on it, and I'll put it in the refrigerator, and then we can enjoy our sauerkraut. We like the sauerkraut and sausage, potatoes, you know, so good eating. It's good for you. So if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to this channel, I would enjoy having you back, and by clicking that bell down below, it will notify you when we have other videos. I'm not going to promise you that everything I say you're going to agree with. I'm not a classically trained chef. I might not even be classified as a cook, but I've been cooking a long time. I've been feeding my family for a long time, and hopefully I can share a little bit of it with you. Come back again real soon, and we love y'all. Mountain Patriot Homestead, signing out.